Chapter 3. The Crack in the Armor. For 3 days, Kylan did not sleep. The fortress of his mind, once an impregnable citadel of discipline and order, was under siege from within. He would find himself staring at a supply ledger, only to see the numbers dissolve into the shimmering silver of Alara's hair. During a tense negotiation with a trade guild, the phantom scent of night-blooming jasmine, a flower that did not grow within 1,000 leagues of the Iron Spire, would drift past, stealing his focus. He heard whispers of his name when no one had spoken. He was being haunted, and the ghost was still breathing. His library, once a sanctuary, had become a torture chamber of quiet concentration. The room was his soul made manifest. Towering shelves of oak held leather-bound tomes arranged with geometric precision. A fire burned low and steady in the black marble hearth, casting a control's glow over the massive, uncluttered desk where he forged the fate of an empire. Order, logic, silence. These were the foundations of his power, and she was turning them to sand. The culmination had been at the War Council. Her spectral form, draped in starlight, her finger tracing his lips, it had felt so real that for a horrifying second he'd almost responded. He had seen the flicker of confusion in his general's eyes as his composure slipped. That was an unforgivable weakness. This defiance, this insidious mental violation, had to end. He would not be unmanned by the captive princess in the next room. He would drag her into his world, the world of cold reality and hard consequences, and he would extinguish this little rebellion himself. He sent a guard. The command was simple: bring the princess to the library now. When Alara entered, she felt the shift in atmosphere immediately. This was not the cold public grandeur of the great hall or the brutal functionality of the training yard. This was his heart, his mind. The air was still and heavy, thick with the scent of old paper, leather, and the faint clean smell of beeswax polish. It was a room that brooked no chaos, and she had been filling his head with it for days. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at her, but it was mingled with the heady thrill of a duelist meeting their rival on chosen ground. He stood by the fire, a silhouette of black against the orange flames. He did not turn as she approached. The Lyrian court was famous for its poisons, he said, his voice a low, dangerous murmur that seemed to soak into the wooden shelves. Subtle, tasteless things that could mimic a fever or a failing heart. It seems your family's talents were not limited to chemistry. I am a healer, my lord, Alara replied, her voice more steady than she felt. I was taught to mend, not to braid. He finally turned, his face a mask of cold fury, his gray eyes seeming to burn with the reflected firelight. Do not lie to me, not in here. He took a step toward her, his presence an invading force. I do not know the nature of your little trick, princess. I do not care. I know only that it began with you, and it will end with you today. You will stop these intrusions. The sheer arrogance of it was breathtaking. He stood in the wreckage of his own composure, a man driven to the brink, and still spoke to her as if she were a child caught stealing sweets. He thought he could command the phantoms in his own mind to heal. A dangerous, reckless impulse seized her. He wanted her to stop. She would show him she was just getting started. He thought this was her invading his sanctuary. She would bring the fantasy to life right here, in the heart of his control. As he glared down on her, his jaw tight with rage, Alara let her eyes soften. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and reached for the tether. Your anger is a fire, she projected, her thought a silken caress against the storm of his mind. But all fires crave fuel. Let it burn. Let it consume you. I will not warn you again, he snarled, taking another step. They were only a few feet apart now. The heat from the hearth warmed her back. She didn't flinch. She fed the fantasy. You think you are threatening me, but look at your hands. They aren't clenched to strike. They're trembling with the need to reach for me. She imagined his powerful hands, the hands that had conquered a kingdom, uncurling, the fingers twitching. What are you doing? He bit out, his voice strained. He took a half step back, a flicker of genuine confusion, of panic in his eyes. He could feel the disconnect between his own will and the impulses she was planting in his mind. She pressed her advantage, her mental voice a seductive whisper. Your words are harsh, but I hear what is beneath them. Not command, a question, a plea. She imagined his cold gray eyes, not with fury, but with a desperate, burning curiosity. She pictured them raking over her, stripping away her defiant facade and seeing the woman beneath. You want to know why. You want to know what I want. Stop it, he commanded, but the words lacked their usual iron. He lifted a hand, pressing the heel of his palm to his temple as if to physically expel her influence. It was then that she unleashed the final, most potent part of the vision. She closed the distance between them in her mind, imagined the fine wool of his tunic beneath her fingertips, the heat of his body. She projected the feeling of her standing on her toes, her lips brushing against his, a phantom kiss that was both an act of defiance and a shocking confession. Kalen roared, an incoherent sound of pure, undiluted rage and frustration. The last thread of his control snapped. In two long strides, he closed the distance between them, his hand shooting out to grip her upper arm. His touch was like a brand, a jolt of raw power and heat. The fantasy and reality violently collided. What do you want from me? He snarled, his face inches from hers. His eyes were wild, the perfect cold mask shattered into 1,000 pieces. It was the same question from her fantasy, but ripped from his throat with genuine, desperate force. Is it revenge you seek in these torturous little dreams? Riches? Your freedom? Name your price, damn you, and make it stop. His grip was bruising, his proximity overwhelming. But beneath the fear, beneath her own thundering pulse, something new and earth-shattering happened. As his raw, uncontrolled emotion flooded him, the sovereign's tether flared. It wasn't the gentle thrum of her projections anymore. It was a backlash, a tidal wave of feeling, but it wasn't her own. For the first time, she felt him. It was a staggering, chaotic torrent. His fury was there, a white-hot inferno. His frustration felt like a physical weight, but beneath it, crashing into her with the force of a physical blow, was something else. Something he had kept locked away in the deepest dungeon of his soul. A wave of raw, possessive, undeniable desire. It was dark and desperate, laced with the same fury that contorted his features. It was the desire for control, for conquest, but it was aimed squarely, personally, at her. It mirrored the very fantasies she had been tormenting him with. But this was no fabrication. It was his, and it was terrifyingly real. Alara gasped, her eyes wide with shock. He felt her flinch, not from his grip, but from the mental shockwave. The game had irrevocably changed. She'd been playing with a phantom, a puppet of her own creation. But the puppet had just revealed its own strings, and they were wrapped tightly around them both. The Amway street of her mental assault had just become a terrifying 12-way bridge.